Hey guys, it's Alex, and I'm here with this week's book review. As I mentioned last week, I decided to film these out of order, so this is not the last book I read, but I read it 2 books ago, so it's close enough. I just needed a little bit of a break before I talked about it. The book I'm going to talk about today is Little Girl Gone by Gerry Schmitt. This is a police mystery / thriller, follows a police community liaisons officer as she helps investigate the kidnapping of an infant and the assault of the teenage babysitter. I don't know what else to say about the plot of this. That's basically the entire plot summed up in one sentence. I gave this 2 stars. I'm at a loss for words here. I don't know how to describe this. There are no spoilers in this book. I don't know if I've ever read a cop mystery thriller where there were no spoilers. You meet the kidnapper on the very first page of the book. Sometimes that can be really well done. That's something that I think Gone Girl especially did very well. You learn, not from the very first page, but you learn fairly early on in the book what's going on, and you learn that secret plot twist. About 2/3 of the book is written with you knowing that plot twist, but the characters were incredibly well developed, and the story was crafted in a way so it's still compelling, and you still want to find out what's going to happen and what these characters are going to do next. In this book, there was none of that. This strived to be a generic, cliche cop mystery, but it failed so miserably by telling you immediately who the kidnappers were, because you spent a very good portion of this book following the cops as they investigated various leads and interviewed suspects. And there's absolutely no suspense in any of that because you already know who kidnapped them. They can interview whoever they want, but you know who the kidnapper is, and you know why from the very first chapter, the second chapter. You meet the kidnappers before you meet the main characters. There was no suspense. I didn't know what to make of it. I didn't know why I was reading this. And maybe it would have had a little bit more suspense if the kidnapper had had a personal connection to the family, but it was a random kidnapping. And you know early on, it's a random kidnapping. In the first chapter, Marjorie, the kidnapper, meets the mother of the infant, and Marjorie's like, ooh, random rich lady, I'm gonna kidnap her baby. And that's the reason. Nothing the cops do is suspenseful or interesting, because you as the reader already know exactly what is going on. And it's just like watching the cops fumble around. And the reason I enjoy cop mysteries is because you're following the cops as they solve a crime, and in a way, you're often solving it with them. You get the clues when they do, and you're putting it together with them. With this, there's nothing to put together. You're just waiting for the cops to find the answer you already have. And I really didn't like that. You have to have a much more interesting book and much more compelling characters to make something like that work in a mystery thriller. And this book definitely could not make it work. In addition to that, the writing itself was pretty bad. It was trying very hard to be pretentious, but the writer kept using very big words, like several syllables, that aren't really normal words that are used in an effort to make her writing elevated, I guess. But it just came off as very uncomfortable and very awkward. I'm not against using big words in writing, and I'm not against using small words. It's all about using the right word, and I feel like a lot of what this author was doing was not the right words. It was just whatever she thought was going to make it more literary or more unique or special or better, and it really made it worse. It was incredibly awkward to read. All the dialogue was really stilted. There was a lot of cringe. And speaking of cringe, I went on a very long Twitter rant about this book. She kept using and saying things that, like the casual use of OCD to mean someone's neat or organized or particular, or describing someone who was skinny as looking anorexic, and the constant reinforcement of gender roles. There was just so much in this book. At one point, she's meeting this guy who I assume is going to become the love interest as the series goes along, because I believe this is the first in the typical cop mystery series. He has 2 sons, and she's like, oh, well, I'm glad I have 2 daughters because My Little Pony and princess parties is so much better than stinky hockey jerseys and gross sneakers. And it's like, what? You know nothing about these kids. Your daughters could be into hockey. His sons aren't necessarily into hockey. Like, if it had been that one line, it wouldn't have been a big deal. Like, that would have been like an eye-rolling, whatever, I'll continue on. But it was constant throughout this book. Everything was just so cringe. She compared this book to an Adam Sandler movie at some point, and I was like, there's nothing in the plot that's like Adam Sandler, but this is just as cringe as watching an Adam Sandler movie. God, I hate Adam Sandler, and God, I hated this book. All the characters were just so unlikable and so tiresome and so annoying, and at best they were unlikable. At worst, I think any character in this book could have been the villain in any other book. Like, every single character, including the leads, including the victims of the crime. It was such a struggle to get through. I gave it 2 stars. I'm not sure if I mentioned that. 2 stars might be generous, but I just feel like this book wasn't special enough to give it 1 star. I'm very particular with what gets 1 star, and like, it has to be a special kind of awful to be a 1-star read for me, and I don't think this was. This was just pretty bad in every respect, but not truly horrific. I really wouldn't recommend it at all. I'm gonna be avoiding this author. I just did not like this. I was not entertained by this, and it was a very long 3 days that I forced myself to read this. Let me know down below if you too have had the great pleasure of reading this book or any other book by Gerry Schmitt. I'm kind of wondering if they're all like this, or if I'm just in a crabby mood, because I always do feel sometimes that when I read a couple of bad books in a row, maybe I'm just in a crabby mood and not into reading. I hope y'all's reading weeks have been going better than mine. Bye, guys.